I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I came home after a 26-hour nursing shift and found a second refrigerator in my kitchen. My son's wife looked at me with cold eyes and said, "That one's mine. From now on, buy your own food." She had placed labels with her name on everything I had purchased, forgetting they lived in my house without paying a single dollar in rent. So I prepared a surprise that made them wake up crying. My feet were throbbing inside my once white nursing shoes as I turned the key in my front door. 26 hours of saving lives, holding trembling hands, and cleaning wounds had left me bone-tired. At 67, I felt every minute of those hours in my aching back and swollen ankles. My name is Deborah Hughes, and I thought the hardest parts of my life were behind me. I was wrong. The smell hit me first, disinfectant that never quite washes off after a double shift. I slipped off my shoes at the door, a habit from 30 years of nursing. The house was quiet, too quiet. Samuel and Rebecca were probably still asleep, even though it was past 9 in the morning. My son and his wife had moved in temporarily a year ago. Temporary had stretched into permanent, with no end in sight. I walked into the kitchen, desperate for a cup of tea, when something stopped me in my tracks. There, beside my old refrigerator, stood a gleaming new stainless steel model. I blinked, wondering if exhaustion was making me see things. But no, it was real. A second refrigerator, humming quietly in my kitchen. My kitchen. The one I'd scrubbed 1,000 times, where I'd cooked every one of Samuel's birthday dinners, where I'd cried after my husband Richard died 15 years ago. "That's mine." I turned to see Rebecca standing in the doorway in her pink silk robe, arms crossed. At 29, she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Perfect makeup, not a blonde hair out of place, even first thing in the morning. "Excuse me?" My voice was hoarse from too many hours giving instructions to hospital staff. "The fridge," she pointed with a perfectly manicured nail. "It's mine. From now on, buy your own food." I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "Rebecca, I buy all the food in this house." "Exactly." She rolled her eyes like I was being particularly slow. "And everyone eats it. It's not fair. So I bought my own fridge. Samuel agrees it's better this way." I opened my refrigerator, and the air left my lungs. Every item, the cheese, tomatoes, yogurt, chicken, even the butter, had yellow sticky labels with Rebecca written in bold black marker. Food I had purchased 3 days ago with my nurse's salary. "What is this?" I whispered, my hand shaking as I touched one of the labels. "Organization," Rebecca shrugged, examining her nails. "Now we all know what belongs to who." "Who bought this food, Rebecca?" "You did." She looked me straight in the eye. "With your money, and now it has my name on it. Deal with it, Deborah." She never called me Mom or Mother, just Deborah, like we were roommates. Like this wasn't the house I'd bought with years of night shifts and overtime. "Samuel!" I called for my son, my voice stronger now. He appeared from their bedroom, hair rumpled, eyes bloodshot. At 32, he looked older somehow, worn down in a way that hurt my heart. "Mom, don't make a scene," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Rebecca's right. We should each buy our own stuff. It's more organized this way." I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. Exhaustion and shock made the room tilt. "Samuel, I paid for this week's groceries. All of it." "And that's why it has her name on it." Rebecca smiled, that empty smile that never reached her eyes. "Now we all know what belongs to who." I wanted to rip off every yellow label and throw them in her face, but I was so tired. So terribly tired. I nodded, turned, and walked to my room, closing the door quietly behind me. For the first time in years, I sat on the edge of my bed and let myself feel the full weight of what was happening. They lived in my house, the house I bought after Richard died, leaving me with nothing but medical debt and an 8-year-old son with severe asthma. I had worked double shifts, triple shifts. I had scrubbed hospital floors at 3 in the morning to make mortgage payments. I had skipped meals so Samuel could have his medication, and now they were making me pay to eat in my own kitchen. I took off my shoes. My feet were swollen, red. A new blister had formed on my left heel. I couldn't remember when I got it. From the living room, I heard laughter. Samuel and Rebecca watching morning TV. The microwave beeped, the smell of popcorn wafting under my door. Popcorn I couldn't eat because it had Rebecca's name on it. I closed my eyes, and in the darkness of my own room, something inside me began to change. I didn't know it yet, but that night, exhausted and humiliated, was the last night I would let them treat me like a stranger in my own home. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's just the calm before the storm. That evening, Margaret Thompson called. We'd worked together at Chicago Memorial for 15 years, and she knew me better than anyone. "You sound terrible, Deb," she said when I answered. I told her about the refrigerator, the labels, all of it. She listened without interrupting, then said firmly, "This isn't about food. This is about respect, and they're showing you none." "What can I do?" I whispered, not wanting Samuel and Rebecca to overhear. "He's my son." "Being your son doesn't give him the right to treat you like a doormat," Margaret replied. "Richard wouldn't have stood for this nonsense, and neither should you." She was right. My husband had been gentle but firm. He would never have allowed our son to disrespect me this way. But Richard was gone, and I had been so afraid of losing Samuel that I'd let too much slide for too long. "Start documenting everything," Margaret advised. "Every penny you spend on them, every incident. And Deb, don't buy them anything else, not one damn thing." After we hung up, I pulled out an empty notebook and began writing. Date, time, and a detailed account of the refrigerator incident. It was the first entry of what would become a record of their betrayal and my awakening. 3 days passed. I worked another 12-hour shift, easier than the 26-hour marathon, but still exhausting. A little girl with severe burns. An elderly man who died holding my hand because his family hadn't arrived in time. I came home wanting nothing more than a hot cup of tea and silence. I went to the bathroom to wash my face and froze in the doorway. Yellow labels everywhere. On the shampoo, the conditioner, the soap, even the toilet paper. Rebecca's name, written in that same bold black marker, claimed everything. I stood staring at my own toothbrush, the only item without a label, as if it were the last thing I had left in this world that was truly mine. In the kitchen it was worse. Pots, pans, glasses, plates, all labeled. I opened the silverware drawer, even the forks. The damn forks had tiny labels wrapped around their handles. "Looking for something?" Rebecca stood behind me, making me jump. I hadn't heard her approach. "Rebecca, this is too much." "Too much?" She tilted her head, that same empty smile playing on her lips. "I'm just protecting my things, Deborah. This way we all know what belongs to who." "I bought these pots 20 years ago," I said, my voice shaking. "I bought these plates when Samuel was in elementary school." "Then put your name on them," she shrugged. "I put mine on what's mine." "And what exactly did you buy?" The words came out harsher than I intended. Her eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, mother-in-law. I'm your son's wife. I deserve respect." Respect. The word echoed in my head as she turned and walked back to the living room where the TV was blaring. That night, Rebecca cooked. The smell of pot roast, my pot roast recipe that I'd taught her when they first moved in, filled the house. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten dinner, just coffee at the hospital. But I couldn't bring myself to go downstairs. Not after the labels. Not after understanding that every bite I took in that kitchen would be a defeat. I heard their laughter floating up the stairs. They were talking about a TV show, about going to Florida. When we sell your mom's car, we could have enough for the hotel. Rebecca's voice carried clearly. Silence. Then Samuel's hesitant response. I don't know if she wants to sell it. Oh, honey, that car is old. She hardly uses it except for work. We need it more than she does. I didn't hear what my son said in return. I only knew that he didn't defend me, didn't remind his wife that the car she was so eager to sell was my lifeline, my independence, my only luxury after years of sacrifice. I called James Peterson the next morning. He lived next door, a retired police detective and one of Richard's oldest friends. Over the years, he'd kept an eye on us, helping with house repairs and looking out for Samuel when he was younger. Can you come over for coffee tomorrow? I asked. I need your advice on something. Anything for Richard's girl, he said, his voice gruff with affection. 8 o'clock work? Before those two wake up? When James arrived the next morning, I had already made coffee and set out the oatmeal cookies he loved. At 70, he still had the sharp eyes and attentive posture of a detective. What's going on, Deb? He asked as soon as we sat down. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. I told him everything, the refrigerator, the labels, Rebecca's comments about selling my car. His expression darkened with each detail. This isn't just disrespect, he said when I finished. This is systematic. They're trying to push you out, make you feel unwelcome in your own home. But why? I've given them everything. James leaned forward. That's exactly why. You've given so much that they now expect it. And people like your daughter-in-law, they always want more. What should I do? First, secure your valuables and important documents. Second, start setting boundaries. Third, he paused, his detective instincts visibly kicking in. I think you need to find out what they're really up to. Something doesn't add up here. After James left, I took his advice. I moved my jewelry, my important papers, and my emergency cash from their usual hiding places to a small safe deposit box at the bank. Then I changed the password on my online banking and set up alerts for any unusual activity. That afternoon, I tried to talk to Samuel alone. I found him in the kitchen, drinking coffee, my coffee, from the coffee maker that now had Rebecca's label on it. Son, we need to talk. He looked up, dark circles under his eyes, making him look older than his years. Mom, if this is about the labels, it's not just about the labels, Samuel. It's about everything. I sat across from him, steeling myself. It's about how you two treat me, how you talk to me. This is my house. I know. Do you? Because it doesn't feel like it. You two don't pay rent. You don't pay utilities. You don't pay property taxes. Nothing. And now I can't even use my own soap. He rubbed his face, a gesture so like his father that it made my heart ache. Mom, Rebecca is my wife. I have to support her. If you don't like how she handles things, maybe you should think about finding your own place. The world stopped. My own place? I don't mean it in a bad way, he continued quickly, seeing my expression. But we're a young couple. We need our space, privacy. We can't always be worrying if how we organize the house bothers you. My house, Samuel. My house. I know it's legally your house, Mom. You don't have to keep saying it. His tone turned irritated. But it's also where I live, where my wife lives. And frankly, sometimes Rebecca is right. You're very old-fashioned. You don't understand how modern families work. I stood up without another word. What could I say? This man, this stranger with my son's face, had just suggested I move out of the home I'd bought and paid for so he and his wife could have more privacy. I went to my room and took out a box from the closet. Inside were photographs. Samuel as a baby. Samuel with his nebulizer, those huge eyes looking at me with fear every time he couldn't breathe. Samuel at his middle school graduation. At his college acceptance. At the hospital after the surgery that saved his life when he was 11. The $28,000 surgery I paid for by selling my car, taking out loans, working at 2 hospitals simultaneously. I ran my fingers over the photos, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel love. I felt something colder, more dangerous. I felt clarity. Because my son had just told me to find another place to live in the house I bought with the money I earned caring for the sick, while he slept peacefully knowing his mother would never let him fall. That night, Rebecca cooked again. Another pot roast. The smell was a knife in my empty stomach. I didn't leave my room. I stayed there in the dark, listening to their laughter, and I started to plan. Because if 39 years of nursing had taught me anything, it was this. You don't heal pain by ignoring it. You heal it by cutting out what's rotten, and something in my house had rotted to the core. The next morning I went to work with a new sense of purpose. During my lunch break, I called my younger sister Elizabeth in Arizona. "Libby, I need your advice," I said as soon as she answered. "That's a first," she laughed. My independent streak was family legend. "What's up?" I told her everything. The labels, Samuel's suggestion that I move out, all of it. By the time I finished, she was speechless with outrage. "Tell me you're kicking them out," she finally managed. "I'm thinking about it." "Thinking about it? Debbie, they're treating you like garbage in your own home. That ungrateful son of yours." "He's still my son, Libby." "Being your son doesn't give him the right to treat you this way. What would Richard say?" The question hit me hard. What would my husband say? Richard had been firm but fair with Samuel, never allowing disrespect. He would be heartbroken to see what our son had become. "I'm coming to visit," Elizabeth declared. "Next weekend. I want to see the situation for myself." "No, not yet. Let me handle this my way first." After we hung up, I sat in the hospital cafeteria, methodically planning my next steps. Margaret joined me, sliding a cup of fresh coffee across the table. "You look different today," she observed, less defeated. "I'm done being a doormat," I said simply. She smiled. "Good. So what's the plan?" "First, I need to find out what they're really up to. James thinks there's something bigger happening here." "James Peterson? The detective?" Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Still checking up on you after all these years?" "He was Richard's best friend." I shrugged, ignoring the knowing look in her eyes. "And he's good at seeing patterns." "Well, he's right. This label business is bizarre. It's almost like they're trying to make you so uncomfortable you'll leave." "Samuel actually suggested I find my own place." Margaret's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "He what?" "Said they need privacy, that I should move out of my own house." "Oh, that's rich." She set her cup down hard, sloshing coffee onto the table. "The house you paid for, where they live rent-free?" "Where's he planning for you to go?" "He didn't specify." "Of course not." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Deb, promise me something. Don't give them a dime more. Not for groceries, not for anything. It's time they learned what it actually costs to live in the real world." I nodded, remembering the $200 I'd given Samuel just last week for gas money, despite the fact that he rarely left the house except to meet friends for drinks. When I returned home that evening, the house was quiet. Samuel's car wasn't in the driveway, and the note on the counter said they'd gone out to dinner with Rebecca's parents. Good. I needed time alone. I stood in the kitchen looking at all those yellow labels and felt something shift inside me. No more. I opened a drawer and took out the marker Rebecca had used. Then, methodically, I began adding my own labels. Deborah on the coffee maker, Deborah on the microwave, Deborah on the refrigerator, my refrigerator. When I finished with the kitchen, I moved to the living room. The TV, the couch, the lamps, all labeled with my name. I continued through the entire downstairs, not touching their personal items, but claiming what was rightfully mine. By the time I heard their car pull into the driveway, I was back in my room, door closed, heart pounding with a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. The shouting started approximately 3 minutes later. "What the hell is this?" Rebecca's voice, shrill with outrage. I heard Samuel's quieter response, though I couldn't make out the words. "I don't care. She's lost her mind. This is childish and petty." More murmuring from Samuel. "No, I will not calm down. This is my house too, and she's—" Silence. Then footsteps pounding up the stairs. A sharp knock on my door. "Deborah, open this door right now." I took a deep breath and opened it. Rebecca stood there, face flushed with anger, a Deborah label crushed in her hand. "What is this?" she demanded, thrusting it toward me. I looked at her calmly. "Organization. Now we all know what belongs to who." "This isn't funny." "I'm not laughing." Samuel appeared behind her, his expression a mix of embarrassment and annoyance. "Mom, what are you doing?" "The same thing Rebecca did, marking what's mine." "But that's everything downstairs." "Yes," I agreed. "It is. I bought it all. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every dish and glass and fork. I bought it, Samuel. Me." Rebecca's face contorted with rage. "You think you can just—" "I think," I interrupted, my voice steady, "that it's time we had a serious talk about who owns what in this house and what that means." Samuel put his hand on Rebecca's arm. "Let's all calm down and discuss this tomorrow. It's late, and no." Rebecca shook off his hand. "We're discussing it now. Your mother has gone too far." I looked at my son, this man I had raised alone, had sacrificed everything for. "Have I, Samuel? Or have I just not gone far enough until now?" He had no answer. The next morning I awoke to find every one of my labels removed. In their place were Rebecca's yellow stickers, more of them than before, covering practically every surface in the common areas. A declaration of war. I didn't react. I ate breakfast silently, ignoring the labels, then left for my shift at the hospital. But as I drove, I made a decision. This weekend, while they were out, I would search their room. James was right. Something bigger was happening here, and I needed to know what. On Saturday, my opportunity came. Samuel and Rebecca left for brunch with her parents. I waited until their car disappeared around the corner, then went to their bedroom. Samuel's childhood room, now unrecognizable with Rebecca's decorating touches. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I started with the nightstand drawers, careful not to disturb anything. Bills, receipts, takeout menus. Nothing unusual. I checked under the mattress. Nothing. The closet yielded only clothes and shoes, Rebecca's taking up 4/5 of the space. I was about to give up when I noticed the loose floorboard near the window. Samuel's old hiding place from childhood, where he'd kept treasures and secrets. Surely he wouldn't still use it. I pried it up gently and found a manila envelope, thick with papers, with my name written on the front in Samuel's handwriting. Mom, important documents. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were the deeds to the house, the ones I kept in my filing cabinet in my bedroom. How had they gotten these? Underneath the deeds was another document, a notarized promissory note dated 2 years ago. Loan, $45,000. Debtor, Samuel Hughes. Creditor, Deborah Hughes. Purpose, Initial investment for imported auto parts business. The memory came flooding back. 2 years ago, Samuel had come to me excited about a business opportunity. A friend had proposed importing car parts from overseas. He just needed $45,000 to start. I had that money, my retirement savings, carefully accumulated over a decade. But he was my son, my only son. "I'll pay you back in 6 months, Mom, with interest. You'll see." We had signed the document in front of a notary at his insistence. So you know I'm serious. The business had failed spectacularly. The friend disappeared with much of the money. Samuel never spoke of the loan again, and I never asked. Because that's what mothers do. They give without expecting repayment. Or do they? I kept looking through the envelope. Bank statements from an account I didn't recognize in Samuel's name, showing regular deposits of $1,500 every 2 weeks. Where was this money coming from if he wasn't working? He'd told me his job search wasn't going well, that the economy was tough. Yet here was proof of steady income. At the bottom of the stack was a folded piece of paper. I opened it to find printed text messages between Samuel and Rebecca. "Rebecca, I already talked to the realtor. He says this house in this area is worth like $300,000. Samuel, that's a lot. Rebecca, that's the point, honey. Your mom is old. She's not going to live forever. And when she's gone, who is she going to leave the house to? Samuel, me? I'm an only child. Rebecca, exactly. But why wait? Convince her to sell it. We'll tell her it's so she can move somewhere smaller, easier to manage. She keeps $80K. We keep $220K. With that, we can start our real life far away from here. Samuel, I don't know. She's going to be mad. Rebecca, she'll get over it. Besides, what's she going to do? Kick us out? You're her son. She won't leave you on the street. We'll give her a few months of the special treatment. Soften her up, and that's it. Samuel, the special treatment? Rebecca, LOL. You'll see. In 2 months, she'll be begging us to help her sell. The date on the messages? 3 months ago. The labels had appeared 2 weeks after that conversation. I took photos of everything with my phone. The promissory note, the bank statements, the text messages, the deeds that had no business being in that drawer. I carefully returned everything to the envelope and placed it back under the floorboard, exactly as I had found it. I walked downstairs on legs that felt like jelly and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the yellow labels that suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't random acts of disrespect. They were calculated steps in a plan to drive me out of my own home. My son, the little boy I had nursed through asthma attacks, had worked 3 jobs to put through college, had conspired with his wife to take my house and leave me with a pittance. The house I'd bought with my pain, with night shifts, with knees ruined from standing 12 hours a day. The house where I'd raised him alone after his father died. I wiped away tears I hadn't realized were falling, and in that moment, something inside me broke, but not how they expected. I didn't break down. I broke forward, because it's one thing to forgive. It's another to be a fool. And I had been a fool long enough. I took out my phone and searched online. Eviction lawyer Chicago. Several names appeared. I chose Walter Miller, a man with excellent reviews in an office downtown. I dialed and a secretary answered. Miller Law Firm, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I need an urgent appointment. My voice sounded firm, surprisingly firm. I want to evict someone from my property. Is it a tenant? No, it's my son. There was a brief silence. I see. When would you like to come in? As soon as possible. We have a slot tomorrow at 11. I'll be there. I hung up just as I heard Samuel's car pull into the driveway. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and prepared to act normal. Because now I knew the truth, and knowledge, as I'd learned over decades of nursing, was the first step toward healing. The next morning, I was sitting across from Walter Miller at 11 sharp. His office smelled of coffee and old books, with law degrees hanging on the wall next to family photos. "Tell me everything, Mrs. Hughes," he said, his expression kind but professional. "Take your time." I did. The labels, the messages, the loan, the house in my name, everything. He took notes, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he removed his glasses and looked at me intently. "Do you have proof of all this?" "I have pictures of the messages. I have the notarized promissory note for the loan. I have the deeds to the house, which are in my name alone." "Do they pay rent?" "No, nothing." "Utilities?" "I pay for everything: electricity, water, gas, property tax, internet." He nodded slowly. "Ma'am, legally you have every right to evict them. It's your property. They have no lease agreement. They pay nothing. They are what we call occupants without title." He paused. "But he's your son. Are you sure about this?" Was I sure? I thought about the yellow labels, the messages planning to sell my house, Samuel telling me to find another place to live. "Yes," I replied. "I'm sure." "All right. I need you to sign a power of attorney. We'll start the legal process. It will take a few weeks, but we can speed things up if they don't cooperate." He opened a folder. "We can also claim the loan with interest. We'd be talking about, let me calculate, around $62,000. The figure made me dizzy. "That much?" "Interest accumulates, ma'am. And your son signed a legal promissory note. That's money you can rightfully claim." I signed the papers and paid the retainer fee, $1,500, money I had saved for emergencies. This was definitely an emergency. I left the office with a strange feeling in my chest, as if I had just jumped out of an airplane without being sure the parachute would open. But there was no turning back now. That evening, I arrived home later than usual, having stopped at the supermarket to buy my own groceries. When I opened the door, I heard voices in the living room. Many voices. I walked in and froze. Rebecca's parents, William and Karen Matthews, were sitting on my couch as if they owned the place. The mother-in-law has arrived," Karen said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good evening," I mumbled. "Deborah, come sit down," Rebecca said, pointing to a single chair in my own living room while they occupied the couches. I sat, groceries still in hand, wondering what this ambush was about. "Look, mother-in-law," William began, a heavy-set man with a booming voice and an air of authority. "We've gathered here because we need to talk about something important as a family." "As a family?" I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. "Jessica told us about the situation," he continued, "and we understand it's hard for you, but you have to be reasonable." "Reasonable about what?" "About the space," Karen chimed in. "This house is big, yes, but 3 adults living together is complicated. The kids need their privacy. They're at an age where they want to start their own family. And you, well, you're in a different stage of life." I felt my blood boil. "Another stage?" "Don't take it the wrong way," William said, hands raised placatingly. "We're just saying it might be better for everyone if you considered options." "What options?" Rebecca leaned forward. "There are some very nice retirement communities, Deborah. Places where you'd be with people your age, with nurses, activities. You wouldn't be lonely." "A nursing home," I said flatly. "It's not a nursing home," Samuel quickly added, speaking for the first time. "They're like communities, and you don't have to go far. There's one here in the city, just off the highway. We went to see it. It's nice." "You went to see it," I repeated. "Without me." An awkward silence. "We wanted to surprise you," Rebecca said brightly. "Look, we even took pictures." She showed me her phone, images of a gray building with small gardens, elderly people in wheelchairs, narrow rooms with single beds. I saw myself there, in that place, waiting to die. "And this house?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Well, Samuel scratched the back of his neck. Rebecca and I would stay here. Eventually, maybe we'd sell it, get something smaller, but that would be later. Of course, I said. Later. The important thing is that you'd be well taken care of, Karen insisted. And the kids could start their life for real. And who would pay for this community? I asked. More silence. Well, you have your pension from the hospital, Rebecca said. And if you sell your car, you'd have enough for the first few months. We'll figure out the rest later. My car, the one I had bought 5 years ago, my only luxury after decades of sacrifice, the one I needed to get to the job I still worked. And if I sell my car, how would I get to work? I asked. I still work, in case you've forgotten. Oh, Deborah, Karen sighed. At your age, you should be thinking about retiring, enjoying life. I'm 67, not 80. But you work too much, Rebecca said in a syrupy voice. You get tired, you get sick. Wouldn't it be better to rest? I looked at my son. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the floor. Is that what you want, Samuel? For me to leave? He looked up, and I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, shame, but not enough to stop this. Mom, we just want what's best for you. What's best for me, or what's best for you? Don't start with your drama, Rebecca snapped, rolling her eyes. It's not drama, Rebecca. It's a question. What do you gain if I leave? You gain, she exploded. You gain peace and quiet. You gain care. You gain not having to clean this huge house. This house that I bought. Oh, here we go again. Always the same thing. My house, my house. Yes, it's my house, but it's also where your son lives. Or what, are you going to kick him out? I stood up. I think this conversation is over. You can't just walk away, William started. I can. This is my house and I'm tired. I've had a long day at work, the job I still do at my age. Good night. I turned and walked up the stairs. Behind me, I heard Rebecca's voice. See, this is what I deal with. The drama, the guilt trips, it's exhausting. I went into my room, I locked the door, and I cried. For the son I had raised, for the sleepless nights when he had a fever, for the 3 jobs I worked to pay for his education, for every dollar I saved thinking about his future. I cried until there were no tears left. When I was done, I washed my face and looked in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen, with dark circles beneath them. But there was something new in my gaze. Resolution. I took out my phone and found Walter Miller's number. Mr. Miller, proceed with everything. I want them out of my house as soon as possible. His reply came within seconds. Understood, Mrs. Hughes. We will file the lawsuit tomorrow. I put down the phone and lay on my bed. Before falling asleep, I whispered into the darkness, Forgive me, Samuel, but I can't save you from yourself anymore. The next few days were strange. I acted normal, too normal. I said hello in the mornings. I made my breakfast without complaining about the labels. I went to work. I came back. I kept to my room. Rebecca was suspicious. I caught her watching me several times, her brow furrowed as if trying to figure out what had changed. Samuel simply avoided me, leaving early and returning late. When we crossed paths, he looked away. Good. Let them think I had given up. Let them believe I had accepted my fate as a bothersome old woman who would soon be shipped off to a retirement home. But at night, when they slept, I worked. I watched. I listened. I documented. I waited for the storm I knew was coming. Tuesday afternoon, I met Margaret for lunch at the small diner halfway between our homes and the hospital. Her shift had just ended. Mine would begin in 2 hours. I hadn't slept well in days, and the exhaustion showed on my face. You look terrible, she said bluntly, sliding into the booth across from me. Thank you for that assessment, Nurse Thompson. I managed a tired smile. I'm serious, Deb. This situation is taking a toll on you. She leaned forward, concern etched on her face. Have you found out anything else? I glanced around the diner to make sure no one was listening, then pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of the documents under the floorboard. My God, she whispered as she scrolled through them. They were planning to sell your house out from under you. And Samuel agreed to this? It looks that way. The pain of my son's betrayal was still raw, a wound that wouldn't heal. And what about this money he's getting? $1,500 every 2 weeks? Where's that coming from if he's supposedly unemployed? I don't know, but James thinks it's suspicious. Margaret handed my phone back, her expression grim. James is right. This isn't just disrespect anymore, Deb. This is fraud. Maybe worse. I nodded, my hands wrapping tightly around my coffee mug. I've hired a lawyer. Walter Miller. He's filing eviction papers this week. Good. What about the loan? Are you going after that too? Yes. With interest, it's up to $62,000 now. Jesus. Margaret shook her head. How's Samuel going to pay that? That's his problem. My voice was harder than I'd intended, but I didn't soften it. He signed a legal document. He promised to repay me. If he'd been honest about struggling, I would have worked something out with him. But he wasn't honest, Maggie. He was plotting behind my back with Rebecca. After lunch, I drove to James Peterson's house. He'd agreed to help me investigate the source of Samuel's mysterious income. As a retired detective, he still had contacts in financial crimes. James's modest bungalow was immaculate, just like the man himself. At 70, he was still fit, with salt and pepper hair and the watchful eyes that had served him well during 40 years on the force. "Come in, Deb," he said, ushering me into his study. "I've been making some calls." I sat in the worn leather chair across from his desk, feeling oddly like a witness being interviewed. "Did you find anything?" "Maybe." He opened a folder. "The company making deposits into Samuel's account is called Meridian Consulting LLC. Ever heard of it?" I shook my head. Neither had I, until today. It's what we call a shell company, exists on paper, has a P.O. box, but no actual office or employees. It's registered to a man named Victor Ramsey. Should I know that name? Probably not, but I do. James's expression darkened. Ramsey's been on the FBI's radar for years. Small-time fraudster, specializes in tax schemes. Nothing big enough to warrant federal prosecution, but he's definitely dirty. My stomach dropped. And my son is working for him? More like he's being used by him. James leaned back in his chair. From what my contact tells me, Meridian Consulting is likely involved in invoice fraud. They create fake invoices for services never rendered, have someone like Samuel sign off on them as a consultant, and then use those invoices for tax write-offs or to launder money. Is Samuel breaking the law? James met my eyes directly. Yes, Deb. If he's signing fraudulent invoices and accepting payment for it, he's committing tax fraud at minimum. If the IRS catches on, he could face serious fines, maybe even jail time. The room seemed to tilt. My son, my Samuel, involved in fraud? I thought of the little boy who'd cried when he accidentally shoplifted a candy bar, insisting we go back to the store immediately to pay for it. How? I struggled to find words. How could he do this? People change, James said gently, and money is a powerful motivator. He probably didn't understand what he was getting into at first, but by the time he did, he was already in too deep. What should I do with this information? James considered for a moment. For now, keep it as leverage. If things get ugly with the eviction, knowing about his involvement with Ramsey might persuade Samuel to cooperate. People like Ramsey don't take kindly to their operations being exposed. I nodded, feeling a weight settle on my shoulders. Not just the burden of my son's disrespect, but now the knowledge of his crimes. When I returned home that evening, I found Rebecca in the kitchen, cooking something that smelled delicious. She looked up as I entered, her smile too bright to be genuine. "Deborah, just in time. I'm making your favorite pot roast with those carrots you like." I blinked, taken aback by this sudden friendliness. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion." She waved a hand dismissively. "I just thought after our talk the other day, maybe we got off on the wrong foot with the whole retirement community thing." Ah, so that's what this was about. Damage control. "Where's Samuel?" I asked, setting my purse down. "He'll be home soon. He's picking up his parents." My head snapped up. "His parents?" Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. "Well, my parents. They wanted to continue our discussion in a more positive atmosphere. The ambush, round 2. I almost laughed at the transparency of it all. "I see," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I'll just freshen up before they arrive." In my room, I called Walter Miller. "They're bringing in reinforcements," I told him. "Her parents are coming over tonight to continue the discussion about my moving to a retirement home." "Stand your ground," he advised. "Don't agree to anything. Don't sign anything. If they push too hard, tell them you'll need to consult your lawyer before making any decisions." "My lawyer," I repeated, tasting the unfamiliar words. "That's you?" "That's me." I could hear the smile in his voice. "And Mrs. Hughes? You're doing the right thing. Remember that." By the time I came downstairs, William and Karen Matthews had arrived. They sat at my dining table, the one Richard had built by hand 30 years ago, as if they owned it. Samuel hovered nearby, looking uncomfortable. "Deborah!" Karen stood to air-kiss my cheek. "You're looking well." A lie. I knew exactly how I looked. Exhausted, strained, older than my years. But I nodded and took a seat at my own table. "So," William began as Rebecca served dinner, "we've been thinking about what we discussed the other day, and we wanted to show you some more options." Karen pulled out a glossy brochure. "Golden Years Retirement Village." "It's even nicer than the first place," Rebecca said enthusiastically. "They have a pool, activities every day, and 24-hour medical staff. And it's closer to the city," Samuel added, "so we could visit more often." I took the brochure and flipped through it. Photos of smiling elderly people playing cards, swimming, doing crafts. Private rooms with attached bathrooms. A dining hall. It looked pleasant enough if you were ready to retire from life. I wasn't. "It's very nice," I said, closing the brochure. "But as I mentioned before, I'm still working. I have no plans to retire anytime soon." William waved a hand dismissively. "Working at your age is admirable, Deborah, but unnecessary. You've done your part. Time to enjoy life." "I enjoy my work," I replied, "and I enjoy my home." A tense silence fell over the table. "Mom," Samuel finally said, "we're just trying to help. You're always complaining about how tired you are, how hard it is to maintain this big house." "I've never complained about the house," I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. "I've complained about working double shifts while supporting 2 additional adults who contribute nothing." Rebecca's fork clattered onto her plate. "That's not fair. Samuel's been looking for work." "Has he?" I turned to my son. "Tell me about Meridian Consulting, Samuel." The color drained from his face. "What?" "Meridian Consulting." I kept my voice steady. "The company that deposits $1,500 into your account every 2 weeks. The one run by Victor Ramsey." Samuel's eyes widened in panic. "How do you— You're receiving money," I continued, ignoring his stammering. "Yet you've told me repeatedly that you can't find work, that the economy is terrible, that you need my financial help. You've borrowed money from me for gas and groceries while cashing checks from a shell company involved in fraud. William was looking between us, confusion evident on his face. Samuel, what is she talking about? Samuel pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. It's nothing, just a small consulting job, hardly worth mentioning. Consulting on what exactly? I pressed. Financial stuff, documents. It's complicated. Signing fraudulent invoices isn't complicated, Samuel. It's illegal. The room went completely silent. Karen's hand flew to her mouth. Rebecca stared at Samuel, her expression unreadable. Mom, you don't know what you're talking about, Samuel said, but his voice trembled. I think I do. I stood up, suddenly unable to continue this charade of a family dinner. I know about the money. I know about the plan to sell my house. I know about the special treatment designed to drive me out. I know everything, Samuel. I turned to the Matthews. Your daughter and my son have been systematically trying to make me so uncomfortable in my own home that I'd agree to sell it and move into a retirement facility. They plan to give me $80,000 from the sale while keeping $220,000 for themselves. William turned to Rebecca, too. Is this true? Rebecca's face flushed red. She's exaggerating. We just thought... I have the text messages, I interrupted. I found them under the floorboard in Samuel's room, along with my house deeds that had been removed from my filing cabinet without my knowledge. Samuel stood up so quickly his chair toppled backwards. You went through my things? You had no right. I had every right. This is my house. You live here rent-free, eat my food, use my utilities, and plot behind my back to take what's mine. My voice was ice cold now, all pretense of civility gone. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was so desperate for your love that I'd let you steal from me? The room erupted into chaos, Rebecca crying, William demanding explanations, Karen trying to calm everyone down. Samuel just stood there, staring at me with a mixture of rage and fear. In the midst of it all, I felt strangely calm. The truth was finally out. The masks had fallen. I want you all to leave, I said, cutting through the noise. Now. You can't just, Rebecca began. I can, and I am. This is my house, and I'm asking you to leave. We can continue this discussion another time when everyone has calmed down. To my surprise, William nodded. Come on, Karen, Rebecca, let's go. He turned to Samuel. You should come with us. We need to talk. Samuel hesitated, looking between Rebecca and me. Mom, please, go, Samuel, I said softly. We both need time to think. After they left, I stood in the silent dining room, surrounded by half-eaten food and the wreckage of what had once been a family. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. But as I cleaned up the dishes, a strange peace settled over me. The truth was out. There would be no more pretending, no more manipulation, no more labels. Whatever came next, at least it would be honest. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hushed, angry voices from downstairs. Samuel and Rebecca had returned late last night, tiptoeing past my door like thieves. Now they were arguing, their voices carrying up the stairs despite their attempts to keep quiet. Can't believe you'd be so stupid, Rebecca was saying. Invoice fraud? Are you trying to go to jail? I told you, it's not like that, Samuel responded defensively. Victor said it's all legal, just a tax strategy. And you believed him? God, Samuel, you're such an idiot sometimes. First the business that failed, then this, and now your mother knows everything. She doesn't know everything. And anyway, this is your fault too. The labels were your idea. Don't you dare blame this on me. I was trying to help us. All you've done is sit around for 2 years, borrowing money from your mom and making excuses. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to their argument spiral. It was painful to hear how quickly they turned on each other when confronted with the truth. But it also confirmed what I'd suspected. Samuel was in over his head, following Rebecca's lead, desperately trying to please her while ignoring his own moral compass. I got dressed and prepared for my shift at the hospital. When I came downstairs, the argument abruptly ceased. Rebecca was nowhere to be seen, and Samuel sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. "Good morning," I said, my voice neutral as I moved to make coffee. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot. "Mom, we need to talk." "I'm listening." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "About last night. The things you said. It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me, Samuel. Explain why you've been lying about having income. Explain why you were plotting to sell my house without my knowledge." "It wasn't like that." He looked down at the table. "Rebecca, she has ideas about how we should be living. The house in Florida, the car, the lifestyle. I just wanted to make her happy. By stealing from your mother?" "I wasn't stealing. I was going to pay you back eventually." "And the house? We weren't going to force you out. We just thought maybe it was too much for you, that you'd be happier somewhere smaller." "With $80,000 while you took $220,000. He had no response to that. "And Meridian Consulting?" I pressed. "The invoices you're signing for Victor Ramsey?" Samuel's face crumpled. "I needed the money. At first I didn't know what it was. Victor said I'd just be a consultant, signing off on some paperwork. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already involved. I didn't know how to get out." I poured my coffee and sat across from him. "Samuel, do you understand that you could go to jail for this?" "Victor said—" "Victor is a criminal, Samuel. He's using you. If the IRS investigates, whose name do you think will be on those fraudulent invoices? Not his. Yours." Fear flickered across his face. What should I do? For a moment I saw my little boy again, the one who came to me when he was scared, when he needed help. But we were long past that now. "That's for you to figure out," I said, getting up to leave. "I have to go to work. Real work, with real paychecks that I've earned honestly." "Mom!" "Wait," Samuel called as I reached the door. "Are you really going to evict us?" I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "Yes, Samuel, I am." His face hardened. "Because of some stupid labels? Because we suggested a retirement home? You're overreacting." And just like that, the glimpse of my real son vanished, replaced by this entitled stranger. "No, Samuel, I'm evicting you because you conspired to take my home, because you borrowed $45,000 and never repaid it, because you've been living here rent-free while secretly earning money through fraud, and because you and your wife have treated me with contempt in my own house." I opened the door. "The papers will be served soon. I suggest you start looking for a place to live." Work was a blessing that day, a respite from the drama at home. I lost myself in the routine of checking vitals, administering medications, comforting patients. For 12 hours, I wasn't Deborah, the betrayed mother. I was Nurse Hughes, competent and calm. During my lunch break, I called my sister Elizabeth. "How did it go last night?" she asked immediately. "Terrible. Wonderful. I don't know." I sighed, picking at my salad. I confronted Samuel about everything, the fraud, the plan to sell my house, all of it. "Good for you. How did he take it?" "Not well. He tried to justify it all, blame Rebecca, make excuses." "Of course he did." Elizabeth's disgust was palpable even through the phone. "Has he ever taken responsibility for anything in his life?" The question stung because I knew the answer. No. Samuel had always had someone to catch him when he fell. First Richard and me, then just me, and now Rebecca, who seemed more interested in using him than supporting him. "I told him the eviction papers are coming," I said. "And?" He accused me of overreacting, said it was just about some stupid labels, and suggesting a retirement home. Elizabeth's snort of derision made me smile despite everything. Classic gaslighting. Make you think you're crazy for being upset about their awful behavior. Don't let him get to you, Debbie. I'm trying not to. When are the papers being served? Tomorrow. Mr. Miller says they'll have 72 hours to leave after that. Do you think they will? I paused, considering. No, I think they'll fight it. Or at least Rebecca will. Samuel might be scared enough about the fraud to want to disappear. Either way, you're doing the right thing. They need to face consequences. Both of them. After work, I drove home slowly, dreading what awaited me. But when I pulled into the driveway, Samuel's car was gone. Inside, the house was quiet. A note on the counter informed me they were having dinner with Rebecca's parents again. I sank into a chair, relieved to have the house to myself, if only for a few hours. But as I sat there, I noticed something different. The yellow labels were gone. All of them. Not just removed, but scrubbed clean, leaving no trace of adhesive behind. In their place, Rebecca had rearranged things, my cookware hidden in back cupboards, my food pushed to the rear of the refrigerator, my toiletries moved from their usual spots in the bathroom. It was subtle, but unmistakable. A new strategy, perhaps. If they couldn't drive me out with labels, they'd try to make me feel like a stranger in my own space. I went to my bedroom and took out the notebook where I'd been documenting everything. I added this latest development, then flipped back through the pages, reading my own account of the past weeks. The refrigerator, the labels, the confrontations, the discovery of their plan. It read like a story about strangers, not my family. My phone rang, startling me. It was James. "Deb, I've got more information about Victor Ramsey and Meridian Consulting. Can you come over?" "Now?" "Better now, while they're out. This is sensitive." 20 minutes later, I was sitting in James's study again, watching him spread documents across his desk. "My contact at the FBI came through," he said, pointing to a file. "Ramsey is under active investigation for a sophisticated invoice fraud scheme. They believe he's been using multiple consultants like Samuel to create a paper trail for services that were never rendered." "How much trouble is Samuel in?" I asked, my mouth dry. James's expression was grave. "Potentially a lot. The IRS doesn't take kindly to tax fraud. If they can prove Samuel knew what he was doing, that he was knowingly signing off on fraudulent invoices, he could face significant fines, possibly jail time. And if they can't prove he knew, he might get off with just having to pay back taxes on the income, plus penalties. But Deb, the evidence suggests he did know. These aren't one-time payments. They're regular deposits over months. At some point, he had to realize what was happening. I nodded, a sick feeling in my stomach. "What should I do?" "That depends." James leaned back in his chair. "Do you want to protect him? Or do you want him to face consequences?" The question hung in the air between us. 6 weeks ago, I wouldn't have hesitated. Protect Samuel. Always. But now? "I want him to take responsibility," I finally said. "Real responsibility, not just words. But I don't want him to go to jail." James nodded thoughtfully. "Then we need leverage. Information he can trade if the authorities come calling." "You mean, turn on Ramsey?" "Exactly. If Samuel can provide valuable information about the scheme, the prosecutors might cut him a deal. Reduce charges, maybe just financial penalties instead of jail time. He'd have to admit what he did." "Yes, and that's probably the hardest part for someone like Samuel." I left James's house with a folder of information. Evidence of the fraud. Contact information for an IRS whistleblower program. Details about Samuel's potential legal exposure. It was my insurance policy, my leverage if things got ugly with the eviction. But as I drove home, I realized I didn't want to use it. I didn't want to threaten my own son with prosecution, even if he deserved it. What I wanted was for him to make this right on his own, to choose to be the man I had raised him to be, not the weak-willed fraudster he had become. When I arrived home, Samuel and Rebecca were back, their voices raised in another argument. I slipped upstairs unnoticed, but not before I heard Rebecca say, "If you had any spine at all, you'd stand up to her. This is our house, too." I closed my bedroom door, shutting out the noise. Tomorrow, the eviction papers would be served. Tomorrow, everything would change. I took the day off work. Walter Miller had called the night before to confirm that the process server would arrive at 10 in the morning, and he suggested I be present. "These situations can get emotional," he'd warned. "Better to have a witness." I spent the morning in a state of nervous anticipation, alternating between certainty that I was doing the right thing and agonizing doubt. Samuel and Rebecca were still asleep, or at least still in their bedroom, when the doorbell rang at precisely 10 o'clock. I opened the door to find Walter Miller in his gray suit, accompanied by a younger man with a briefcase, the process server. "Good morning, Mrs. Hughes," Walter said formally. "Good morning. Please come in." They entered, and I led them to the living room. As we settled onto the couches, Samuel emerged from the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mom, who are these people?" Before I could answer, Walter stood and extended his hand. "Walter Miller, attorney at law. This is Mr. Parker, a legal process server. We're here on official business." Samuel ignored the outstretched hand. "What official business?" Samuel?" Rebecca appeared behind him, wrapped in her silk robe. "What's going on?" Walter cleared his throat. "I am here to serve legal documents to Samuel and Rebecca Hughes on behalf of my client, Mrs. Deborah Hughes." "Legal documents?" Rebecca's voice rose. "What is this, Deborah?" The process server opened his briefcase and extracted a sheaf of papers. "Samuel Hughes and Rebecca Hughes, you are hereby served with the following. 1. Immediate eviction from the property located at 847 Juarez Avenue. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. 2. A lawsuit for default on a loan documented before a notary public. Total amount due $62,000. 3. A lawsuit for moral damages and improper use of private property. Estimated amount $15,000. Samuel turned to me, face pale. "Mom, what is this?" "This," I said in a firm voice, "is the end." Rebecca snatched the papers from the process server's hands. "This is insane! You can't sue us! We're your family!" "Family?" I repeated the word as if it were poison. "The family that put labels on my own food? The family that planned to sell my house from under me? The family that's been secretly earning money while claiming to be broke?" "Mom, wait." Samuel took a step toward me. "We can talk about this. You don't have to do this." "There's nothing left to talk about, Samuel. You had months to talk. You had 1,000 chances to treat me like your mother, and you chose to treat me like trash." "That's not true. I love you." "You love me?" The laugh that escaped me was bitter. "You loved me so much, you told your wife to convince me to sell my house. You loved me so much, you told me to find another place to live. You loved me so much, you screamed that you didn't ask to be born." He fell silent, unable to deny any of it. Walter continued, his voice professional and detached. "You have 72 hours to vacate the property. If you do not do so voluntarily, we will proceed with a judicial eviction. Additionally, Mr. Hughes has 30 days to respond to the loan lawsuit. Otherwise, we will proceed with asset seizure." "We have nowhere to go," Rebecca screamed. "That is not my client's problem," Walter replied coldly. "You have family," I added. "You have options, but you no longer have the right to be here." "You're a monster," Rebecca spat the words at me. A bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. I looked her straight in the eye. No, Rebecca, I'm a woman who no longer allows herself to be trampled on in her own house. I turned and walked up the stairs, leaving Walter to handle the rest. Behind me, I heard Rebecca's continued protests, Samuel's pleas, Walter's firm responses. I closed my bedroom door and sat on the bed, heart pounding. It was done. The papers were served. In 72 hours, they would either leave willingly or be forced out by the sheriff. One way or another, I would have my home back. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt a profound sadness. This wasn't how things were supposed to end between a mother and her son. But then Samuel hadn't been acting like a son for a long time now. A knock at my door startled me. "Mrs. Hughes?" It was Walter. "May I come in?" Yes. He entered, closing the door behind him. They've left temporarily. Miss Hughes, Rebecca, was becoming hysterical, so Samuel took her to her parents' house. "Thank you for handling that." I gestured for him to sit in the armchair by the window. "It's my job." He settled into the chair. "Mrs. Hughes, I want to prepare you for what might happen next. These situations rarely resolve themselves quietly, especially with family involved." "What do you think they'll do?" "Based on my experience, they'll likely try one of three approaches. 1, they'll attempt to emotionally manipulate you into withdrawing the eviction. Tears, promises to change, reminiscing about better times." I nodded. Classic Samuel tactics. 2, they might try intimidation, threats, property damage, involving other family members to pressure you. "Rebecca's style," I murmured. 3, they might seek legal counsel and try to fight the eviction in court. However, given the strength of our case and the lack of any formal tenancy agreement, this would be an uphill battle for them. "So what should I do now?" "Document everything. If they contact you, record the conversation if legal in your state, or take detailed notes immediately afterward. If they damage property, take pictures. If they make threats, report them to the police." He paused. "And prepare yourself emotionally. The next 72 hours will likely be difficult." After Walter left, I wandered through the empty house, feeling its silence like a physical presence. For the first time in over a year, I was truly alone in my own home. No yellow labels, no whispered arguments, no sense of being watched and judged in my own kitchen. I ran my hand along the dining table Richard had built, remembering how proud he'd been of it. What would he think of all this? Of our son? Of me? "I'm doing the right thing, aren't I, Richard?" I whispered to the empty room. No answer came, of course. But as I stood there, surrounded by the home we'd made together, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Richard had always believed in justice, in consequences for actions. He would have been heartbroken by Samuel's behavior, but he would have supported my decision to stand up for myself. The peace lasted until my phone rang. Karen Matthews. "Deborah, what have you done?" Her voice was shrill with anger. "Rebecca is inconsolable. Eviction? Lawsuits? Have you lost your mind?" "Hello to you too, Karen." "Don't take that tone with me. We're talking about your son here. Your own flesh and blood." "Yes, we are. My son who borrowed $45,000 from me and never repaid it. My son who plotted with your daughter to sell my house without my knowledge. My son who told me to my face that I should move out so they could have more privacy in my home." That's not how Rebecca tells it. I'm sure it isn't. But I have proof of everything I'm claiming, Karen. Text messages, bank statements, notarized loan documents. Do you? Silence on the other end of the line. "I thought not," I continued. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do." "This isn't over, Deborah." she warned before hanging up. No, I thought as I set down the phone. It certainly isn't. 3 hours later, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Samuel alone, looking haggard and defeated. Can I come in? He asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We can talk in the living room. He followed me, perching nervously on the edge of the couch as I took a seat in Richard's old armchair. Where's Rebecca? I asked. At her parents'. She's not taking this well. I'm not surprised. Samuel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father that it made my heart ache despite everything. Mom, please. You have to reconsider this. The eviction, the lawsuits, it's too much. Is it? What would be an appropriate response to what you've done, Samuel? He looked down at his hands. We made mistakes. I know that. The labels were petty. The retirement home suggestion was premature. But evicting us? Suing me? Your own son? You keep saying that. Your own son, as if it grants you immunity from consequences. As if being my son gives you the right to deceive me, to take advantage of me, to plot against me. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I leaned forward. Tell me about Victor Ramsey, Samuel. Tell me about the fraudulent invoices you've been signing for him. His head snapped up, eyes wide with panic. How do you know about that? I know a lot of things. I know you could go to jail for tax fraud. I know the FBI is investigating Ramsey. I know you've been receiving regular payments while telling me you can't find work. Mom, I can explain. I don't want explanations, Samuel. I want you and Rebecca out of my house in 72 hours. I want you to repay the money you borrowed from me. And I want you to take responsibility for your actions, for once in your life. He stood up abruptly. Fine. If that's how you want it, fine. We'll leave. But don't expect me to ever forgive you for this. I looked at my son, this man I had raised, had loved more than my own life, and felt nothing but sadness. I'm not the one who needs forgiveness, Samuel, but someday I hope you'll understand why I had to do this. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sat in the sudden silence, a strange calm settling over me. The worst had happened. My son had chosen Rebecca and his pride over honesty and responsibility. It hurt, God. It hurt more than I could express. But there was also relief. No more pretending. No more walking on eggshells in my own home. No more financial drain. I was 67 years old, and for the first time in decades, I was putting myself first. It felt terrifying. It felt necessary. It felt right. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of a car door slamming. I looked out my window to see Samuel loading boxes into his car. They were leaving, earlier than the 72-hour deadline. I watched from behind the curtain as he made trip after trip, carrying out clothes, electronics, personal items. Rebecca was nowhere to be seen. After about an hour, he drove away, presumably to take this load to her parents' house. I went downstairs and surveyed the situation. They had taken only their personal belongings, leaving furniture and household items untouched. In the kitchen, Rebecca's fancy refrigerator stood empty, its door slightly ajar. It was happening. They were really leaving. I felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, sadness, guilt, vindication. But underneath it all was a growing sense of freedom. My house would be mine again. My life would be mine again. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Walter Miller. Mrs. Hughes, I wanted to update you. I received a call from an attorney representing your son and daughter-in-law. They've agreed not to contest the eviction and will be completely moved out by tomorrow evening. That's good news, I said, surprised by the quick capitulation. Yes, but there's more. They're requesting a meeting to discuss the loan repayment and the moral damages lawsuit. They want to explore a settlement option. A settlement? Yes. It seems they'd prefer to resolve this without going to court. Would you be open to such a meeting? I considered the question. Part of me wanted my day in court, wanted to force Samuel to publicly acknowledge what he had done. But another part, the practical nurse who had seen too much suffering, just wanted this over with. Yes, I finally said. I'm willing to meet, but I won't be manipulated, and I won't waive the loan repayment. Of course not. I'll arrange the meeting for later this week, after they've vacated the property. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the two refrigerators side by side. One old but reliable, like me. One new and shiny, already abandoned, like Rebecca's commitment to my son. Tomorrow, they would be gone. Tomorrow, a new chapter would begin. I only hoped I was ready for it. The next morning dawned gray and rainy, matching my mood. I had slept poorly, haunted by dreams of Samuel as a child, crying for me during an asthma attack, reaching for me with small, desperate hands. I woke feeling exhausted and emotionally drained, but I also woke to a quiet house, my house, and the knowledge that by nightfall it would be truly mine again. I spent the morning cleaning, trying to keep my mind occupied. I stripped the beds in Samuel and Rebecca's room, opened windows to air out the space, and began removing all traces of their presence. It was therapeutic in a way, like excising a wound. Around noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find James Peterson on my porch, holding a casserole dish. "Figured you might need some company today," he said gruffly. "And some lunch." I smiled, genuinely touched. "Come in. I could use both." We sat at the kitchen table, eating his surprisingly good chicken casserole and talking about inconsequential things, the weather, neighborhood gossip, a new restaurant that had opened nearby. It was a relief to think about something other than my family drama. "So," James finally said as we finished eating, "they're really leaving?" "Yes. Walter called yesterday. They've agreed not to contest the eviction." "That's good. Clean break." I nodded, pushing food around my plate. "They want to discuss a settlement for the loan and the damages. Are you going to agree?" "I don't know yet. Part of me wants Samuel to face the full consequences of his actions, but another part wants this to be over," James finished for me. "I understand. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is to let go, even of justified anger." "When did you get so wise?" I asked, attempting a smile. He chuckled. 40 years of seeing humanity at its worst gives you some perspective." After James left, I continued my cleaning. Around 3 o'clock, I heard cars pulling into the driveway. Looking out the window, I saw Samuel's car, along with William Matthews' SUV. The final move-out had begun. I stayed in my bedroom, not wanting to witness the process. From my window, I could see them carrying out larger items. Rebecca's vanity, some bookshelves, the expensive television they'd bought last Christmas. William directed operations with military efficiency, while Karen and Rebecca stood to the side, occasionally pointing at items. Samuel looked lost, moving mechanically between house and vehicles, his shoulders slumped in defeat. At one point, he glanced up at my window, and our eyes met briefly before I stepped back, letting the curtain fall. The loading continued for hours. As evening approached, the activity slowed. Finally, around 7, there was a knock at my bedroom door. "Mom?" Samuel's voice. "Can we talk?" I opened the door to find him standing there, keys in hand. "We're done. Everything's packed." "Good." I kept my voice neutral. I wanted to return these." He held out the house keys. "And to say, I'm sorry for everything." I took the keys but said nothing. What was there to say? Sorry couldn't undo months of disrespect and betrayal. "The lawyer meeting is set for Friday. he continued awkwardly. About the loan and stuff. I know, Walter told me. Samuel shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca's not coming. She's pretty angry about all this. I imagine she is. Mom, he hesitated, then blurted out. This doesn't have to be the end, does it? I mean, we're still family. I studied my son's face, the face I had memorized from his first breath, had watched change from baby to child to man. Despite everything, love for him still lived in my heart. But it was a wounded love now, cautious and wary. I don't know, Samuel. That depends on you, on the choices you make going forward. He nodded slowly. I understand. I'll see you Friday then. After he left, I walked through the house, checking each room. They had taken all their personal belongings, leaving only the furniture and household items that had been here before they moved in. Rebecca's refrigerator was gone, leaving an empty space beside mine. In the bathroom, the yellow labels had been scrubbed away, though faint outlines remained on some surfaces. They were gone. Really gone. I sat in Richard's old armchair in the living room, feeling the silence settle around me like a blanket. For the first time in over a year, I was truly alone in my own home. The relief was palpable, but so was the sadness. This wasn't how things were supposed to be between a mother and her only child. The next 2 days passed in a strange limbo. I worked my shifts at the hospital, came home to an empty house, and tried to adjust to the new normal. Margaret and James both checked on me regularly, offering support and companionship. My sister Elizabeth called daily, promising to visit soon. On Friday morning, I met Walter Miller at his office before the settlement meeting. Are you ready for this? He asked as we reviewed our strategy. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, stay firm on the loan repayment. That's non-negotiable. But we can be flexible on the damages and the repayment timeline if necessary. I understand. At 11 o'clock, Samuel arrived with his lawyer, a young woman named Jennifer Chen. We all sat around Walter's conference table, the atmosphere tense and formal. Thank you for meeting with us, Ms. Chen began. My client is eager to resolve these matters amicably. Walter nodded. As is mine. Let's start with the loan. $45,000 principal plus accrued interest of $17,000, for a total of $62,000. Mrs. Hughes has documentation of the original loan, including a notarized promissory note signed by Mr. Hughes. Ms. Chen glanced at Samuel, who nodded slightly. My client acknowledges the debt and is prepared to repay it. However, given the amount, he would like to propose a payment plan. We're open to that, Walter replied. What did you have in mind? The negotiations continued for over an hour. In the end, we agreed to a payment plan. Samuel would pay $500 monthly for the first year, then $1,000 monthly after that until the debt was satisfied. It would take years, but it was better than nothing. For the moral damages, we settled on a reduced amount of $10,000, payable in installments over 2 years. Throughout the meeting, Samuel said little, letting his lawyer handle most of the discussion. He looked tired, defeated, a shadow of the confident man who had moved in with me a year ago. As we prepared to sign the final agreement, Walter turned to Samuel. Mr. Hughes, do you understand and accept all terms of this settlement? Samuel nodded. Yes. And you acknowledge that this settlement does not impact the eviction, which has already been executed? Yes. Very well. Walter pushed the papers toward him. Please sign where indicated. Samuel signed his name on multiple pages, then slid the documents back to Walter. It was done. Legally, at least, we had resolution. As we stood to leave, Samuel turned to me. Mom, can we talk privately for a minute? Walter looked at me questioningly. I nodded. It's all right. Everyone else filed out, leaving Samuel and me alone in the conference room. I just wanted to say. He trailed off, then started again. I'm sorry. Really sorry. for everything. I believe you're sorry now, Samuel, but are you sorry for what you did or sorry that you got caught? He flinched at the directness of the question. Both, I guess. At first, just that I got caught. But now I see what I've done. To you, to us. And Rebecca? Where do things stand with her? A pained expression crossed his face. Not good. She blames me for everything, for getting involved with Victor, for not standing up to you, for signing the settlement today. We're taking a break. I wasn't surprised. Rebecca had never struck me as someone who would stick around when things got difficult. What will you do now? I asked. I'm staying with a friend temporarily, looking for a job, a real one this time, and I need to deal with the Victor situation. He hesitated. James Peterson came to see me yesterday. This was news to me. He did? Samuel nodded. He told me about the FBI investigation, about my options. He said if I cooperated, testified against Victor, I might avoid the worst consequences. And will you? Yes. For the first time in our conversation, Samuel looked me directly in the eyes. I'm going to fix this, Mom. All of it. I know you probably don't believe me, but I'm going to try. I studied my son's face, looking for the sincerity I so desperately wanted to see. Was this another manipulation or the first step toward real change? I couldn't tell. I hope you do, Samuel. For your sake, not mine. As we left the conference room, Walter pulled me aside. Everything all right? Yes. He says he wants to change. Walter's expression was skeptical. People often say that when they're facing consequences. I know, but he's still my son. Just be careful, Mrs. Hughes. Protect yourself first. I nodded, but as I watched Samuel walk away, shoulders slumped and head down, I felt the maternal instinct to protect him surge up despite everything. It would take time to trust him again, if I ever could, but I couldn't stop hoping that somewhere inside that man was still the boy I had raised, the boy who knew right from wrong. Only time would tell if he could find his way back to being that person, and only time would tell if I could find my way back to being his mother without being his enabler. For now, I had my house back. I had my dignity back, and for the first time in a very long time, I had hope for the future, my future, on my own terms. 2 weeks passed since the settlement agreement. The house felt different, emptier, quieter, but somehow lighter too. I'd returned to my normal routines, work, grocery shopping, occasional dinners with Margaret or James, phone calls with Elizabeth. But something was missing, an ache that wouldn't quite go away. Despite everything Samuel had done, I missed my son. I hadn't heard from him since the meeting at Walter's office. No calls, no texts, not even an update on the loan payments that were supposed to begin the following month. I tried not to worry, to remind myself that Samuel was an adult who had made his own choices and now had to live with them. But a mother's heart doesn't turn off so easily, even when it's been broken. On a rainy Tuesday evening, I was just settling in with a cup of tea and a book when the doorbell rang. It was past 9, an unusual time for visitors. I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to find James Peterson on my porch, looking grim. James? I opened the door. What's wrong? Sorry to come by so late, Deb. He stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat. It's about Samuel. I thought you should know. My heart clenched. Is he hurt? No, nothing like that. James removed his coat. He came to see me today. Wanted my advice about cooperating with the FBI against Victor Ramsey. And he's in trouble, Deb. Big trouble. The FBI interviewed him yesterday. They've got evidence that he knowingly participated in the fraud scheme. Emails, texts between him and Ramsey discussing the fake invoices. I sank onto the couch, legs suddenly weak. Could he go to jail? James sat opposite me. It's possible. His lawyer's trying to work out a deal, full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. But it depends on how valuable his information is, how many others he can implicate. Where is he now? Staying with a friend in Lincoln Park. But Deb, there's more. James leaned forward. Rebecca left him. Filed for divorce 3 days ago. The news hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything Rebecca had done, I knew Samuel loved her. For all her faults, she had been his anchor, his compass, albeit one pointing in entirely the wrong direction. Poor Samuel, I murmured, surprising myself with the genuine sympathy I felt. James nodded. He's in a bad way, Deb. Lost his wife, might lose his freedom, definitely lost his mother's trust. That's a lot for anyone to handle. Did he ask you to tell me this? No, he doesn't know I'm here, but I thought you should be aware in case... He trailed off. In case what? In case he reaches out, in case he needs you. I stared into my tea, thoughts swirling like the steam rising from the cup. I don't know if I can help him, James, not after everything. I understand that, and God knows he's earned every bit of this trouble. James's voice was gentle. But rock bottom can be a turning point, Deb. Sometimes people need to lose everything before they can start rebuilding. After James left, I sat in the darkened living room for a long time, thinking about Samuel, about second chances, about forgiveness. Was I ready to offer any of that? Did he even deserve it? I didn't know. The next morning I was preparing for work when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mom? Samuel's voice, ragged and raw. I need help. 20 minutes later, I was pulling up outside an apartment building in Lincoln Park. Samuel was waiting on the steps, a duffel bag at his feet. He looked terrible, unshaven, hair unwashed, clothes rumpled. But it was his eyes that shocked me most. Red-rimmed, hollow, haunted. Thank you for coming, he said as he climbed into the passenger seat. I didn't know who else to call. What happened to your friend, the one you were staying with? Tyler? He kicked me out, said he couldn't risk having me there with the FBI investigation. I nodded, unsurprised. Fair-weather friends were the first to disappear when real trouble arrived. Where are we going? Samuel asked as I pulled away from the curb. I hadn't quite decided until that moment. My house, just temporarily, until you figure out your next steps. He looked over, surprise evident on his exhausted face. You'd let me stay? After everything? You're still my son, Samuel. I kept my eyes on the road, unable to look at him. But there will be rules, strict rules. And at the first sign of disrespect or manipulation, you're out. Understood? Yes, absolutely. We drove in silence for several minutes. Then Samuel spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, Mom. I know I've said it before, but I mean it. I'm so sorry. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I know you are, Samuel, but sorry isn't enough. You need to show me, show yourself, that you've truly changed. I will, he promised. I'll do whatever it takes. At home, I showed him to the guest room, not his old bedroom, which I had already begun converting into a sewing room. A clear message. This was not a return to the way things were. I have to get to work, I told him as he set his bag down. There's food in the refrigerator if you're hungry. We'll talk more tonight. Mom, he called as I turned to leave. Thank you. I don't deserve this kindness. No, I agreed. You don't, not yet. But maybe you can earn it. At the hospital, I couldn't focus. My mind kept returning to Samuel, alone in my house. Was I making a terrible mistake? Was I setting myself up for more hurt, more betrayal? Margaret found me staring blankly at a patient chart, lost in thought. Earth to Deborah, she said, waving a hand in front of my face. You okay? I told her about Samuel's call, about bringing him to my house. Are you out of your mind? Her voice rose, drawing glances from nearby staff. She lowered it quickly. After everything he did? After everything we went through to get him out of there? I know it sounds crazy, because it is crazy. He and that wife of his treated you like garbage. They plotted to steal your house, for God's sake. Rebecca left him, I said quietly. Filed for divorce. Margaret snorted. Of course she did. The ship was sinking, and she grabbed the first lifeboat. Classic Rebecca. He has no one else, Maggie. That's his problem, not yours. You don't owe him anything. He's my son. Margaret's expression softened. Oh, Deb, you have the biggest heart of anyone I know. But please, please be careful. Don't let him hurt you again. When I returned home that evening, I half expected to find the house empty, Samuel gone along with my valuables. Instead, I found him in the kitchen, cooking dinner. Hope you don't mind, he said nervously. I thought it might be nice after your shift. It's pot roast, Dad's recipe. The kitchen was spotless, the table set neatly for two. A small vase held a single flower, a daisy picked from my garden. It smells wonderful, I admitted, setting down my purse. We ate in awkward silence at first, both of us unsure how to navigate this new territory. Finally, Samuel spoke. I met with my lawyer today about the FBI case. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. If I testify against Victor and the others, provide all the evidence I have, they'll reduce the charges. Probably no jail time, just probation and fines. He pushed his food around on his plate. But I'd have to admit to everything, on record, in court. And are you willing to do that? He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. Yes. It's time I faced the consequences of my actions. All of them. He set down his fork. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about who I've become, about how I got here, and I don't like what I see. What do you see, Samuel? A weak man. Someone who took the easy way out at every turn. Someone who let others, Dad, you, and then Rebecca, make his decisions for him. I was stunned by his self-awareness. This was not the Samuel I had evicted 2 weeks ago. Rebecca, he shook his head. She saw that in me from the beginning, saw how easy I was to manipulate, and I let her do it because it was easier than standing up for myself, for you. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to know that I understand what I did wrong, and because I want to fix it, if it's not too late. I studied my son's face, searching for signs of the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to, but all I saw was raw, painful honesty. It's not too late to change, Samuel, I said carefully, but it won't be easy. Real change never is. I know, he nodded. But I'm ready. I have to be. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, I heard muffled sounds from the guest room. I paused outside the door, listening. Samuel was crying, deep, gut-wrenching sobs that he was clearly trying to stifle with a pillow. My first instinct was to go to him, to comfort him as I had when he was a child. But this wasn't a child's skinned knee or a teenager's broken heart. These were the tears of a man facing the wreckage of his own making. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is step back and let their child feel the full weight of their choices. So I went to my room and closed the door, my own silent tears falling for the son I loved and the painful road he had ahead. The next morning, Samuel was already up when I came downstairs, dressed and showered, making coffee. I'm meeting my lawyer at 9, he said, handing me a cup. Then I have a job interview at noon. A job interview? This was unexpected. He nodded. At a hardware store. Nothing fancy, just a sales associate position. But it's a start. That's wonderful, Samuel. I'm proud of you for trying. He looked down, embarrassed by the praise. Don't be proud yet. I haven't done anything worth being proud of. But I will. Over the next few days, Samuel and I established a tentative routine. He attended meetings with his lawyer, went to job interviews, and helped around the house without being asked. I went to work, came home, and gradually adjusted to having him back in my space. We were cautious with each other, polite, keeping conversation light. But I knew we needed to address the deeper issues eventually. The loan, the eviction, Rebecca, Victor Ramsey, all of it. The opportunity came nearly a week after Samuel's return. We were having dinner when he suddenly set down his fork and looked directly at me. I need to tell you something, Mom. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I steeled myself. Go ahead. The day Dad died, he made me promise something. Samuel's voice wavered. He made me promise to take care of you, to make sure you were never alone, to be the man of the house. I remembered that day all too clearly. Richard in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors everywhere, his once strong voice reduced to a whisper. I was 17, Samuel continued, and I took that promise seriously. Too seriously, maybe. I built my whole identity around being your son, your protector, your replacement for Dad. Samuel, you were never— Let me finish, please. He took a deep breath. When I couldn't live up to that impossible standard, I started resenting you for being so strong, so independent, for not actually needing me to take care of you. And then I met Rebecca, and she made me feel needed, important, the way I thought I was supposed to be with you. I sat in stunned silence, never having considered this perspective before. But she needed me in all the wrong ways, Samuel went on. She needed my compliance, my weakness. And I gave it to her because it was easier than admitting I'd failed at the one thing Dad asked me to do. Your father never meant for you to sacrifice your own life for mine, I said softly. He just wanted you to be there for me, as a son, not as a replacement for him. I know that now. Samuel wiped away a tear. But it took losing everything, you, Rebecca, my self-respect, to figure it out. And now? What do you want now, Samuel? I want to rebuild everything, my life, my relationship with you, my self-respect, but this time on honest terms as the person I really am, not who I think I should be or who others want me to be. I reached across the table and took his hand, the first real physical contact we'd had since his return. Then that's what we'll do, I said. Together, one day at a time. The next morning, Samuel came downstairs with a piece of paper in his hand. Mom, I want to show you something. It was a repayment plan for the loan, meticulously detailed. $300 per month for the first 6 months, then increasing as his income grew. The plan would take nearly 18 years to complete, but it covered every penny of the $62,000. I know it's a long time, he said nervously, but I want to pay it all back, every cent, and I will. I examined the document, touched by the effort and thought he'd put into it. This is a good start, Samuel, but 18 years is a very long time. I know, but I'm 32 now. By 50, I'll have paid my debt to you in full. The determination in his voice moved me deeply. This wasn't the entitled Samuel of 2 weeks ago, expecting forgiveness without effort. This was a man ready to make amends, however long it took. I accept this plan, I said, folding the paper carefully. And I'll hold you to it. I'm counting on that, he replied, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. Later that day, Samuel received a call from the hardware store. He got the job. It wasn't much, $15 an hour, part-time to start, but his relief and pride were palpable. It's not exactly the career I imagined, he admitted after hanging up. But it's honest work, and I'm grateful for it. That evening, as we sat in the living room watching an old movie, one of Richard's favorites, Samuel turned to me with a serious expression. "I've been thinking about finding my own place soon," he said. "I don't want to impose on you any longer than necessary." "You're not imposing," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "You're welcome to stay until you get back on your feet." "Thank you, but I need to do this. I need to stand on my own." He hesitated. "Actually, I found a small room for rent not far from here. It's nothing fancy, but I can afford it with my new job. I thought maybe I could move in next week." I felt an unexpected pang at the thought of him leaving again, but I recognized the importance of this step for his independence. "If that's what you want, I'll support you. But Samuel, this is still your home too. In a way, it always will be." His eyes filled with tears. "Even after everything I did?" "Family is complicated," I said, thinking of all we'd been through. "It can be broken, but it can also be rebuilt, if both sides are willing to try." "I am willing," he said earnestly. "More than willing." We fell silent, watching as Jimmy Stewart ran through the snowy streets of Bedford Falls on the television screen, calling out to his friends and family in joyful recognition of what truly mattered in life. "Dad loved this movie," Samuel murmured. "He did. He saw himself in George Bailey, the man who gave up his dreams for the people he loved." I wish I could be more like him. Like Dad, I mean. I turned to look at my son, seeing in his profile echoes of the boy he had been and the man Richard had hoped he would become. "You have it in you, Samuel. You always have. You just lost your way for a while. And now? Now you've found it again. The hard part is staying on the path." He nodded thoughtfully. "One day at a time, right?" One day at a time. As the movie ended, I realized something had shifted between us. The wall of hurt and betrayal hadn't crumbled completely, but cracks had appeared, letting in tentative beams of forgiveness and hope. The road ahead would be long and undoubtedly difficult, but for the first time in months, I believed we might actually walk it together. Sunday morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect early autumn day. Samuel had been staying with me for nearly 2 weeks, and today was his last day before moving into his rented room. I came downstairs to find him already up, coffee brewing, the table set for breakfast. "Good morning," he said, looking up from the newspaper. "I thought we might have breakfast together before I start packing." "That sounds lovely." As we ate, Samuel seemed unusually nervous, repeatedly checking his phone and glancing at the clock. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked. "Yes, just—" He hesitated. "I have a meeting later, an important one." "With your lawyer?" "No, with—" He was interrupted by the doorbell. "That would be them now. Excuse me." Puzzled, I watched as he went to answer the door. A moment later, he returned with a young woman I'd never seen before, pretty, with warm brown eyes and a tentative smile. "Mom, this is Laura Miller, Walter's daughter. Laura, this is my mother, Deborah Hughes." "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Hughes," Laura said, extending her hand. "I've heard a lot about you." I shook her hand, surprised. "It's nice to meet you, too, though I'm afraid Samuel hasn't mentioned you." Samuel looked embarrassed. "Laura and I met at Walter's office. She works there as a paralegal. She's also been helping me sort through some things." "Legal things?" I asked, still confused. "Personal things," Laura clarified gently. "I volunteer as a peer counselor at the community center. Samuel joined our support group for people rebuilding after personal setbacks." Understanding dawned. "I see." "Laura's been a good friend," Samuel added quickly. "Nothing more. It's too soon for anything like that, with the divorce and everything else. But she's helped me see things more clearly." I invited Laura to join us for breakfast, And as we talked, I found myself genuinely liking her. Unlike Rebecca, she was unpretentious and thoughtful, listening more than she spoke. When she did speak, it was with intelligence and compassion. After breakfast, Laura excused herself to make a phone call, leaving Samuel and me alone in the kitchen. "She seems very nice," I said cautiously. "She is." Samuel smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "Nothing like Rebecca. Not that we're dating or anything. Like I said, it's way too soon for that. But she's been a good friend when I really needed one." "I'm glad you found someone to talk to." "Actually, that's kind of why we're here today." He looked nervous again. "There's something I want to do, something important, and I asked Laura to come for support, and because I wanted you to meet her." Before I could ask what he meant, Laura returned, and Samuel announced it was time for them to go. "Would you like to come with us, Mom?" he asked unexpectedly. "Where are you going?" He took a deep breath. "To see Rebecca?" I blinked in surprise. "Rebecca? Why?" "I need to apologize to her, properly, for my part in all this." He held up a hand as I started to protest. "I know what you're thinking, but this isn't about getting back together. It's about taking responsibility for my actions. All of them." I hesitated, torn between concern that he was setting himself up for more manipulation and pride that he was taking this step. "Are you sure that's wise?" "No," he admitted with a wry smile. "But it's necessary, for me at least." "Then I'll come, if you're sure you want me there." "I do." He looked relieved. "We're meeting her at the coffee shop on Maple. Neutral territory." The drive to the coffee shop was tense, Samuel growing quieter with each passing mile. Laura sat in the back seat, occasionally offering words of encouragement. I wondered what exactly their relationship was, but now wasn't the time to pry. Rebecca was already at the coffee shop when we arrived, seated at a corner table, elegant as always in a beige pantsuit, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Her expression when she saw me was one of pure shock. "You brought your mother?" she said to Samuel, not bothering with pleasantries. "And this is Laura," Samuel replied calmly. "A friend who's been helping me." Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she assessed Laura, clearly trying to determine if she was a romantic rival. Whatever conclusion she reached, she didn't share it, merely nodding curtly. We sat down, an awkward quartet. Samuel ordered coffee for everyone, then turned to face Rebecca directly. "Thank you for meeting me," he began. "I know you probably don't want to be here." "Then why ask me to come?" Rebecca's tone was cool, defensive. "Because I owe you an apology." Samuel's voice was steady, his gaze unwavering. "Not for the eviction or the divorce, those were consequences of our actions, but for being a weak husband, for not being honest with you from the beginning, for letting our relationship become what it did." Rebecca blinked, clearly not having expected this approach. "I wasn't strong enough to stand up to you," Samuel continued. "But I also wasn't strong enough to stand up for you, to be the partner you needed. I let you take control because it was easier than taking responsibility for my own life. And that wasn't fair to either of us." Rebecca's mask of indifference slipped, revealing confusion and something else. Perhaps regret. "I don't understand," she said finally. "What are you trying to accomplish here, Samuel?" "Nothing," he replied simply. "I don't want anything from you. I'm not trying to get you back or change your mind about the divorce. I just wanted to acknowledge my part in what went wrong between us, and to wish you well going forward." "And her?" Rebecca jerked her head toward me. "Why is she here?" Samuel looked at me, a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Because I'm trying to make amends to everyone I've hurt. Mom is here because I want her to see that I'm serious about changing, about being honest, even when it's difficult." Rebecca was silent for a long moment, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. "I wasn't a good wife to you, Samuel, or a good daughter-in-law." She glanced at me briefly. "I had my own ideas about how our life should be, and I didn't care who got hurt in the process." "We both made mistakes," Samuel said gently. "Yes, but mine were deliberate." Rebecca's honesty surprised me. The labels, the retirement home suggestion, those were calculated. I wanted to drive your mother out so we could have the house. I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. "Why tell us this now?" I asked, speaking for the first time since we'd sat down. Rebecca considered the question. "Because Samuel is being honest, and I owe him the same courtesy, and because—" she hesitated. "Because I've been doing some thinking of my own these past few weeks about the kind of person I want to be." We talked for nearly an hour, the conversation gradually shifting from apologies to more practical matters, the finalization of the divorce, the division of their few joint assets, Samuel's cooperation with the FBI investigation. Through it all, I watched my son with growing admiration. He was calm, thoughtful, firm when necessary, but never cruel. This was not the weak, easily manipulated man who had moved into my house with Rebecca. This was someone new, or perhaps someone who had been there all along, buried beneath layers of insecurity and misplaced loyalty. As we prepared to leave, Rebecca pulled me aside while Samuel and Laura waited by the door. "I really am sorry, Deborah," she said quietly. "What I did to you in your own home was inexcusable." "Yes, it was," I agreed, not quite ready to offer absolution. "But I appreciate your honesty today. Samuel has changed." She glanced over at him. "I didn't think he had it in him, but he's proved me wrong. He's finding his way back to the person he used to be, the person he was meant to be." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "Well, good for him." She paused. "And good for you, for not giving up on him completely. That would have been the easier choice." "The easier choice isn't always the right one," I said, thinking of all the times I had enabled Samuel's dependency, all the times I had chosen peace over confrontation. Sometimes love means doing the hard thing. As we drove home, Samuel was quiet, lost in thought. Laura had declined a ride, saying she had errands to run nearby, leaving just the two of us. "Are you okay?" I asked as we neared the house. "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "Better than okay, actually. I feel lighter." Honesty has that effect sometimes. It wasn't easy facing Rebecca like that. "No, I imagine it wasn't. But it was necessary." He turned to look at me. "Like evicting us was necessary. I understand that now." I reached over and squeezed his hand briefly before returning mine to the steering wheel. "I'm proud of you, Samuel, for today, for everything you're trying to do." "I'm trying to be the son you deserve," he said quietly. "The son Dad would have been proud of." "You're on the right path." When we arrived home, Samuel went upstairs to begin packing for his move the next day. I sat in the living room reflecting on the morning's events. My son was changing, genuinely changing. Not all at once, not without struggle, but the transformation was real. And I realized that I was changing too. The hurt and betrayal I had carried for so long was beginning to ease, making room for something new. Not blind trust, not yet, but perhaps a cautious faith in the possibility of redemption. Later that evening, Samuel came downstairs with a small box in his hands. "I found this while I was packing," he said, setting it on the coffee table between us. "I thought you might want it back." I opened the box to find a silver pocket watch. Richard's watch, passed down from his grandfather. I had given it to Samuel on his 21st birthday. "Why are you returning this?" "Because I didn't earn it," he said simply. I didn't live up to what it represents. Dad's integrity, his sense of responsibility. I closed the box and pushed it back toward him. Keep it, not as a reward for who you were, but as a reminder of who you're trying to become. He hesitated, then nodded, taking the box back with reverent hands. Thank you. I'll try to be worthy of it. The next morning, James Peterson arrived with his pickup truck to help Samuel move his few belongings to his new room. I stood on the porch, watching as they loaded the last box. All set, James announced, closing the truck's tailgate. Ready when you are, Samuel. Samuel turned to me, his expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. I guess this is it. This isn't goodbye, I reminded him. Just a new chapter. Sunday dinner, he suggested. I can bring dessert. Sunday dinner, I agreed. 6 o'clock. He hugged me then. A real hug. Tight and full of meaning. I love you, Mom, and I'm going to make this right. All of it. I know you will, Samuel. I know. As the truck pulled away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness at seeing him go. Pride in the steps he was taking. Hope for the future we might rebuild together. It wouldn't be easy, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks along the way. But for the first time in a long time, I believed in the possibility of healing. I went back inside, to the house that was truly mine again, and began planning Sunday's dinner.